All right, my name is Jay Tambornino with the Minnesota Bankers Association. A little background on this. We have an event much like this, nowhere near the grand scale of this. I think we maybe need to step up our game a little bit. But last year, AI was a big topic for us. So Bruce pulled me aside because Bruce always comes to our events and goes, "Hey, you should give a talk on AI at our event." And I'm going, "What your event?" And he's like, "Oh, it's really cool. You need to do it." I'm going, "All right, I can do that." So I thought, okay, banking on AI. That should be easy enough. I'll just throw, "Hey, give me a 1-hour presentation on banking in AI in an AI generator and have it generate it for me." That didn't work. That's kind of a mess. So I started writing it on my own, going all the way through, and I thought, well, where did it all start? Well, who remembers this? Yep, okay, we're showing our age now. I have to admit, I did see the movie before I read the book. Did not know that it was a book that was being made at the same time as the movie. But Arthur C. Clarke talked about what? What was the computer? What was the computer running the ship? Cal 9000. Hal decided he wanted to self-preserve himself, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. So I thought, well, I was probably, 10 or so at the time. I remember watching it at my grandmother's house. And my grandmother was not a Stanley Kubrick fan, so she did not like that we were watching it. But I remember watching it there, and then she thought, well, he's got an interest in this. Let's see if he likes this book, because this book had just been released. So this is what really sparked my interest. Nope, that's not moving. There we go. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxies. Okay, now I'm getting into my true geek. Big fans? Anybody? Who read all of them? Waited for him to come out? Okay, it was the Harry Potter to me. I was waiting for that next book to come out because we were waiting for that next one to come in. And that carried me all the way through high school. The last book, well, technically there was another book after that, but we're not going to get into that one because that wasn't written by Douglas Adams, so we don't count it. But yeah, that was a big piece of me. I completely loved Marvin. Marvin was my favorite animatronic robot. He was so depressing. He had the worst bleak outlook on life, and I thought, this is cool. This is what computers should be. Who remembers what the computer was? The main one. The one that they built to answer all of life's one question. The big think. And what was the answer to life's all question? Cool. All right, we got other geeks in here like me. This is awesome. 42. Didn't mean anything, didn't do anything. It just, I thought, well, this is dumb. I like this. So with that, because I gone through all those books, one of my computer teachers in high school, because I was helping our computer teacher teach computer classes, because she didn't know what they were doing at the time, she turned me on to Alan Turing. Interestingly enough, Alan Turing wrote Computer Machinery and Intelligence in 1950. Who's read it? Kind of read it? Anybody over here? No? Check it out from the library. Don't bother buying the book, and it's going to take you weeks to get through because it's just, yeah. It's kind of a boring read, but it's really kind of insightful. He was not, I don't know, people think he wasn't playing with a full deck, but now you look back on it going, ooh, he was so ahead of his time, it's not even funny. So, yeah, Alan Turing was kind of the godfather to everything in computers. So that leads me into this agenda. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about what is AI, what truly is AI. We keep throwing around the term AI, and really what a lot of people are calling AI is really nothing more than predictive analytics. We've had it for eons. Well, true AI is not predictive analytics. It's taking predictive analytics, dumping it back in, and then trying to create new analytics from what it digested, and it's kind of a mess. We're going to talk about the DIKUW or DIKW, depending on where you get your information from. And we'll talk a little bit about where that U comes into play and kind of the organizations behind why they're trying to push it. Legislation, there really hasn't been a lot of legislation on AI, truly generative AI. California has the first bill. It's kind of interesting. We'll kind of go through that bill a little bit because I don't think it's going to be the last one, and I think there's going to be a lot of kind of new frontier bills that are going to be pushed across, probably at the government level, not at the state level. We're going to talk a little bit about how AI is used now. Don't want to spoil anything, but we're not really using AI that much in banking yet. There's a few things. A lot of larger bank companies, card services, are using it. More just for transactional data, but we'll talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about deploying it. Mentioned earlier whether you're going to use, well, depending on what flavor you're going to use, most of you, I'm sure, are going to be Microsoft Shop, so you're probably going to be using Copilot. Where it's going to get that information from, what large language models you're going to use for it, things to think about as you're starting to deploy it, and why maybe you shouldn't. And then we're going to talk about the large language models themselves. From it's probably a different, three different areas. I kind of have a different look on it. I look at it from the financial side of it. I also look at it from like a video editing side of it because I do that on my spare time. My wife is a teacher, so she has different large language models that she uses for deciding or defining what papers are fraudulently written by students, which is kind of fun. And then we'll talk about really how it's being used and what scares us as banks right now. So without that, truly, what is AI? Well, there's two different flavors. You have narrow AI. It's specific to one thing. You are designing it to do one task. This is available. This is what we're doing. It's very narrow. It can't think on its own. It's not deciding what it's going to do. This is available. I mean, we can do this part. The general AI piece, that's taking a lot of narrow AIs and letting it try to think on its own and try to more than just predict what you want, but try to incorporate different routines into what is simulated as something thinking on its own. We're not there yet. We don't have that. We don't have the computing power to effectively do that yet. Watson came out, what? When did Watson play chess? 15 years ago, 20 years ago? That was narrow. It couldn't do anything else. It could only do that. So to be ready for generative AI, we're just not there yet. So a little bit about the, and I mentioned it before, the DIKW model. Data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. Understanding is, who's into podcasts? Oh, more people need to be in podcasts. You got Drive Time. There's really good ones out there. AI Today is a podcast that I automatically download every single day. It's just waiting for me when I get in the car. It's only 20 minutes. They'll talk about different little subjects. They are really pushing that understanding piece. They want that understanding to be in between knowledge and wisdom, to allow AI to understand what its role is and what it's supposed to be doing and don't go beyond it. Which goes into the legislation piece too, we're going to talk about later, but it's really trying to find what is usable and what is not going to harm anybody. Well, if as we all know, if you develop something that could be used for good, it's going to be used as a weapon first. Well, AI is no different, and we'll kind of show that later. But on the sidebar, you'll see an Internet of Things. We have that. We've had it forever. And then you have Internet of Behaviors. Behaviors is what AI is trying to do. It's trying to do something or provide you something in return for what the information is. So, as we're going through that list, we've had data since we could remember something. Cavemen had data. Didn't know what to do with it. Didn't have any way to do anything or teach anything from it until we got to a written language. So that's the information piece of it. Once we got into the information piece, now we're starting to say, okay, now I have large sums of data, a book, and the information side of it is going to be the table of contents so we can find that information quicker in its simplest form. In reality, what we have are massive database tables, especially in the banking world, of all kinds of information on our customers, their accounts, how much money is in it, transactions going in and out, and we're using that information now to supply information back to online banking systems, to supply information back to us in a report format. That was there. Now we're starting to get into the knowledge piece of it. What can we do with that data? We're just starting to touch base on predictive analytics. There's quite a few banking people out here. How many people have, outside of banking, how many people have a database of large customer information and you can query that information and have it automatically spit back information based on maybe what is your most profitable customer, what isn't maybe is something that you're taking the most time with? Databases? No? Really? Whew, we have them in banks. Had it for a long time. That's just starting to touch the very bottom of that knowledge piece. Where it goes from here, it's growing exponentially. Banks are always looking for better, cleaner ways to get information from their data that they already have that can, A, most of the time, help the customer, B, make the bank more profitable so they can help more customers. But there isn't anything that is just going to say, well, hi, I have all this data. Hey, this is the information that I think you want out of it. We don't do that. We're really cautious about the data that we have. So we just don't let anything touch that data. So the wisdom piece of it, we're nowhere near. Even in the industry, we're nowhere near having something that can think on its own. It would be really cool, but I also think it could be really, really bad, which comes into the legislation piece. Now, I have two children that are political science majors. Both of them, one of them went the history route, the other one's going constitutional law route. They are the most annoying people that you can ever have at a Thanksgiving dinner. I love them. They're annoying. But they are so into writing bills. My son loves writing bills and getting them pushed up through Congress. It's really weird. But California is the first to come out with, SB 1147, 147, 1047. It was the first government-regulated bill specifically designed around AI. Now, this came about this year. So the first time I was giving it, third time I was giving an AI speak, we were going through it, and you'll find out the surprise in the end of this thing when I thought, oh, this is going to be really cool. We need to get this bill passed. Well, this is the Safe and Secure Innovation for Frontier Artificial Intelligence Model Act, SB 1047. Ooh, cool. It's a California bill intended to mitigate the risk of catastrophic harm from AI models so advanced that they have not yet known to exist. Oh, that's cool. Spynet. Spynet, really? Terminator 3? Skybot. What? Skynet. It's okay. Specifically, the bill would apply to models which cost more than $100 million to train and were trained using quantity of computer power greater than 1026 integer to the floating point operation. Oh yeah, that was written by your legislation. Guaranteed. Yeah, they know what that is. So the cool part about it, when you're going through, is to mitigate the risk of catastrophic harm from AI models so advanced that they have not yet known to exist. Okay, so this is a bill for something we don't know about yet? Awesome. And it's computing power greater than, I still get a kick out of this going, oh, okay, show me somebody in the House of Representatives in California that knows what this is. Oh, yeah, I take that back. Silicon Valley's there. There might be one. We don't know. But it was the location of the company does not matter. So it's anybody doing business in California or is touching a system in California. This bill allows them to be prosecuted if something harmful happens. It goes on and on. It's a huge bill. I literally think it's like 6 pages long. But as you're going through, it's holding the person or computing cluster as defined to implement written policies and procedures. Okay, banks, we do that. Everybody's got written policies and procedures for everything, right? Just banks? Come on. So, but it also pulls whistleblower precautions. Also, later on in the bill, it also demands a kill switch. So if anything happens, they have a way of shutting it down. Now, I don't know if anybody kind of knows how the processing power of AI is going to work, but to have that kind of system in place, you're not talking one computer. You're talking huge server farms just to get this information. There is not a kill switch. You're not going to be able to do it. Plus, if you yank the power on it, the power grids across the country are self-healing. So, I mean, you can't shut it down. So with that, but it allows the Attorney General to be able to prosecute if anything is disruptive, holds harmful. They're really looking for catastrophic events at this point. And I thought, well, okay, it's a start. We can rewrite this bill. It's fine, but we can do this. Well, September 29th, Newsom vetoed it. And why he vetoed it, was kind of shocked. He actually was forward-thinking on it. He's like, no, we're not going to, I don't want to veto this bill. It's not specific interest model size. He doesn't want it based on $100 million and the computing power because he thinks the innovation for this type of technology is going to come from a very small shop. It's going to be 3, 4 guys sitting around in their dorm rooms at Caltech or MIT, and they're going to come up with a model and it's going to work. And that's not prosecutable. So he sent it back and went, take out all that garbage. I want this, a blanket AI statement across the board. We're going to wait and see what this next bill comes, but this might be the kind of the preeminent bill that's going to set the tone for all bills going forward on AI. So we're kind of watching this one. They haven't come up with a new bill name yet. I know it won't be SB 1047. And I don't know why they called it this, what they did, this social internet, blah, 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 blah. It's like, just call it Skynet. So, that's interesting. I think there needs to be some kind of a government control or governing control over it. I don't know that it has to come from our government. And I don't know how, well, we all know fraud cases going outside of the country on all the fraud stuff that we have. It's not really prosecutable by us anyway. So I don't know what good it's going to do, but we need to have something in place. We have to set guidelines. And right now in AI, there are no guidelines as to what they can look like because it's still in the early frontiers of it. So how is AI being used now? In banks? Well, it is, and it isn't. We like to believe it is. I think some of the big card companies have generative AI built right into it that's looking for fraud detection. Perfect example why you need it. But for us, in the individual little banks, it's still kind of a scary territory. We don't want it to have access to our information, and we're sure not going to put our information out on the web. Just can't help it. So there was a few, I don't know that we have any really large banks here. I've had a couple of conversations with a bank out coming up for our conference, coming up in May again. I have been in discussions with a bank out in Michigan. And they're a small bank in Michigan, but a small bank in Michigan is still, I think they're at 52 billion and have 52 locations and do everything on their own. But they're really playing in this AI field. They've isolated all their data. They only allow what they want in it. But they have been developing their own loan platform system. Only banks are going to know what I'm talking about, but loan platform system is all the legal garbage that has to go along with a note. So they're using AI to automatically generate all that information and spit it back out. We have something like that, but we have to tell it what we want to include. They're using AI to actually generate it on its own, which is really cool. But they're also using it for a lot of other things. Tons of fraud detection. They're running it constantly on their system. They're also using it for, I don't know, a playful situation. GLBA, anybody other than banks familiar with what GLBA is? No? Really? Oh, we're under so much regulation, it's not funny. GLBA is a standard letter to the board. It's a framework for all the information security pieces that a bank has to go through, but every year we have to generate a GLBA letter to the board and inform the board of everything that we've done. It is the most boring red piece of paper ever. What this bank did was took that same GLBA letter, fed it into an AI generator, and told an AI generator to spit it back out in the form of a podcast. So they spit it back out in the form of a podcast, stuck it into another AI generator that was a voice translator, and created multi-voice, so they went back and forth talking about everything, and now they condensed a fairly 15-page GLBA letter to the board down to a 5-minute podcast that they sent out to their board of directors because they'd actually listen to that instead of reading the paper. I thought, I'm going to do that. That would be cool. So yeah, he's coming up with solutions for things that we didn't really know we needed. And he's doing it just because he's an AI guy. I mean, that's what he was hired at this bank to do, just find stuff and implement it. So we're trying to get him to talk at our MBA conference in May, so he'll be really cool if he says yes. So how else are we using it? Customer service. We've been around most of our VRU systems have been in place since the 90s, voice response units, so you can call up in telephone banking and stuff like that. Mobile banking, online banking, it was a dial-up cash management system I was playing with back in the 90s. Modems, it was cool. Nobody used it, but it was cool. But what we're doing is setting the stage for what AI could look like. So some of the larger, there's big five. There's big five core banking system providers out that supply the main software that most banks use. They've all been playing with AI because they want to be driving a chatbot. Real-time chatbot into their person's account, so if somebody jumps on, they already know it's them because they're in their online banking system already, and they can ask it questions and it's going to spit back information. Really, really cool. Not used. We just don't trust it. And it's not really giving any information that they can't get on their own anyway. So what purpose is it doing? Well, if you take it one step further and say, okay, if anybody even calls the bank, and now it's going to go through this chatbot. Okay, in theory that works. We're small community banks out here. We're not Wells Fargo. We're not US Bank. We want that one-on-one talking with our customers. We need to know who they are. So we don't want a chatbot or a voice response chatbot that's going to just talk in real time to them. We want to know, I mean, our bread and butter is the customer, so we are going to talk to our customers. So that's not really taking off, and they haven't really explored it any further than that. I know Jack Henry was really big into it on their Banno online banking, and people implemented it. It's out there. A lot of people just turned it off because their customers didn't want it anyway. Where we are seeing a huge uptick is in fraud detection. Nothing works better than a standardized AI model to look at all transactions and spit back anything that is out of the ordinary. We've been playing with fraud detection for, I don't know, 15 years? 10 years at least. So all transactions are run into this fraud detection thing, and it automatically spits back anything that looks suspicious or is out of sequence. In card services, the big ones, Visa, MasterCard, Shazam, I mean, all of them, it's looking at each transaction, where that transaction is generated from, and automatically spits out anything that could be potentially fraud. Cool. I want to know about fraud going on in my account before I even know there's fraud going on in my account. Little intrusive, but so far pretty well received. That seems to be where the biggest piece is. And the AI algorithms that are used to generate those are perfectly set up for anomaly detection, because it can know exactly what format everything is going in, and if anything is out of sequence, it automatically flags it, spits it out, goes through a routine, notifies somebody. Cool. That's what we needed. That's where it is. Where we're starting to see it is on the risk assessment and credit scoring. So everything in banking revolves around risk assessments. You as a customer are assigned a risk level to a bank. So what we're doing is using some of these AI models to say, okay, take this information and then take other information that we have on the customer, or that we can glean from the customer, credit reports, whatever, automatically push this back and give me a credit information or credit risk, or use it then to distinguish what kind of a loan rate they can get. What kind of an interest rate can we pay on a large savings account? All right, cool. This has been around for a little while, but this is really nothing more than predictive analytics. So there's been, and it's not widely used, but there's been a lot of these loan platform systems that will automatically take all that information to decide whether or not, yeah, this could be a good loan, this couldn't be a good loan, this is what we think the payoff is going to be, and this is how it's going to work. Is that AI? Not really. It's predictive analytics. We're not feeding it anything we don't already know. It's just putting it back in a format that is easier for us to understand. Oh, no, go back. No, we'll go forward. Going forward again. One more time. Okay, interestingly enough, we have a couple members on our IT committee at the MBA that are from relatively small banks that are really kind of progressive when it comes to, there's one in particular that's really playing in the IT world, but he's playing it in the Google world, so he's keeping it outside of the bank completely. And he's using it for regulatory compliance. And it's not really regulatory compliance as we know it. He just wants to put in all the Fed regulations use a large language model that is just clear speech. I mean, something that can read whatever. Define what his data parameter is, or his search parameters, which is every banking regulation, so that he can just ask it plain text questions. What regulation does this, or how, if I do this, and it'll automatically go through, spit out pretty accurate information, because he's limiting what it's allowed to look at. I thought, well, that's cool. That's marketable. So he's actually exploring that, and it's, just one guy. He's actually the president of the bank, and he just plays with IT on his spare time, which is like, oh, I don't know how you can run a bank and have spare time, but cool. So what else are we seeing? Customer to market analytics across multiple platforms and not limited to the systems that we know about. Okay. In a core system, you have the data. That data can now be parsed out into some other database, split any which way we want, and then we'll parse the information in that database to see, well, just give me information. So give me my top 10 customers, give me my average interest rate across all loans, just to give me where my profitability is on a daily basis. Really kind of cool stuff. Well, using an AI can now take that information and then parse outside world statistics. So based on your demographic or based on not only demographic, but location, and if it's a multi-branch, split it out by branch or by telephone sequence, or you can do it any way you want, but it'll automatically take that information and spit that information back at you, maybe parse down more than you even needed it parsed down to, but cool. And then used to summarize audit reports. Banking is full of audits. We are audited to death. To summarize them, doing what that bank in Michigan was doing, that would be actually pretty cool to be able to take that full report, dump it right into an AI generator and say, give it to me in summarized format, because our board is not going to go through, or our compliance committee is not going to go through this entire report. Just give me the highlights. What do we have to work on? So I think we're going to start seeing some of this twofold. I think we're going to start seeing more of this where it's summarizing, but it also means the examiners are going to want to see even more reports from us. So great. So I talked a little bit about different AI deployment models. Now, we've talked about large language models. That's kind of the front-end interface, and there's huge amounts of them. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what we really need to do is kind of focus on what it takes to develop or what we want to do with it. So the main thing is going to be is a model compatibility with infrastructure. We do not have that now. Our database, and which is why we take that core system data that I mentioned before and dump it into some other system so that we can search through it and do what we want with it. It's a step that really shouldn't need to be done. We should be able to tap right into that data and see it. So why are we creating more steps for us? With the more steps, we're creating more space. With more space, we're creating more drive space. It's just a never-ending thing. So we really need it to interface directly to the data that we currently have, or change the data that we currently have into a format that it will work with. Now, the other side of it, and he mentioned earlier, is protecting that sensitive information. You turn on AI and turn it on to your main shared drive. It does not care where it finds that data or how you have that data locked down if it is not locked down. So anybody can just jump into an AI question going, hey, what does our president make? And if it finds HR records, it will tell them. So you really do need to lock your data down and know where your data lives. We've been talking about data classification for, 15 years, 20 years, at least, in banking. It's defining, knowing exactly what information you're storing where and how you're protecting it. Well, now it's really going to come into play with AI. Because if you turn it over, it's going to find it. Because it's pretty indecisive. And then scalability. Most banks are small. We're not trying, we're not trying to make big think. We're not asking it to solve the world's what is, why. It's like, no, we want it to do very specific tasks. So the scalability challenge is really there with AI because you can go down a rabbit hole really, really fast. Going, ooh, we want to do this. Well, yeah, but to do that, you need this, and you need this, and you need this, and you need this. And you have to get so granular with it that you're recreating every job function and process that you're currently doing in order to get it to do even the simplest routines. So Yeah, the scalability issue is really going to be coming into play on that one. So that ties back into choosing your platform. So you decide, hey, we're going to be playing in AI. How do you want to play in AI? Well, you have multiple different solutions, cloud-based platforms. That's where I'm seeing most of it right now. So anybody that's using AI or allowing the use of AI, they're using the cloud-based platforms, Copilot, Google's. The processing is not being done on their systems. The on-premises and on-site deployment, I don't know if anybody here even has the infrastructure to run this. Maybe. It is processor and drive intensive. So along with, Amazon Web Services, it's a good platform for it because now, even if you put a closed system in a cloud-based solution, you're only paying for processor time and drive space. Two things that are relatively cheap. Keep in mind, you're losing control over your data. So by moving it out into that cloud, you better have the security controls in place to protect that data and be able to prove how you're protecting that data. The on-premises is huge. I know one bank that is playing with it. They want to do it on-prem. He wants full control of it. The processing power that it takes is unreal, but it's a completely closed system. He's not going to any outside form. He's pulling in the entire large language model that he's using, so it does not see the internet. It's completely closed. And then you have edge computing. That's kind of a hybrid approach where it's on the outside edge of your network. It can point in. It's still doing all the computations outside of your network. Great for resources, but there's security risk because it's constantly talking. Well, if you have something that's constantly talking, you have something that can be constantly intercepted. So yeah, I at this point in the game, I really like the on-premises side of it. I don't know if it's feasible. Or you limit what information you do it and do it in the cloud. So you don't give it access to the inside network, and you only use it for stuff that, creating marketing materials. Marketing's our new bane of existence. Used to be compliance, now it's marketing. They just want to do everything. So I talked a little bit about large language models. That's the front-end interface on how it's going to ask, or how you're going to interpret asking that question. And there are tons of pre-built large language models for very specific tasks. There are some in the financial sector. There's more in the scientific sector. So scientists are building their own large language models to ask it stuff in their terms. There's a lot of plain text ones. There's some specifically designed just for teachers. There's some just designed for students to get around the ones that the teachers are using. Those are kind of interesting because they're coming out faster than the teacher ones are, so you got to keep up on them. But the large language models is really nothing more than interpretive. How to ask it a question in plain English or in the English that you're used to using. So it doesn't have to be, especially for the scientific models, you can ask it, what color is the sky today? And it's going to go, well, you need to be more specific with your color scheme. So choosing your right large language model is kind of going to set the tone for what you're going to use the application for. When you're setting it up, you're going to have different large language models based on who's using it, what's using it, what information it has access to, and what you're going to be asking it. So you might not only be looking at one AI system, you might be looking at multiple AI systems to get the same information or to get the information that you're looking for. Doesn't work. Oh, there it does. There's a lot of them. I just did a quick scan on them, and Wikipedia alone has like 400. And they're built for specific things. They're also built for specific languages. So if you want a translatable one, say you have a large Hispanic population in your bank and you don't have somebody on the bank that does speak Spanish, you can throw a large language model in that does translation and have it auto-generate the talk, which is pretty cool. It's pretty scary because it does it in real time. As long as you got enough horsepower behind it, it'll do it in real time. So, now that we have it, how do we want to deploy it? Well, you better define what you're going to be using it for and be very granular. We have this specific need, or we would like to see it do this. Not, hey, we just want it. Well, that's not going to give you anywhere. You need to have a specific task. And building that specific task is way more in depth than you think it's going to be. This is not something you just say, yep, we're going to turn it on. Do not do that. You want to define what it's going to be used for, what data it's going to have access to. Is it just going to be out on the net and let it search whatever it wants? Because we've done that. We did that, about last October. NBA News, we publish a magazine at the NBA. Send it out to all the banks. If you go into a bank, you might see it sitting on the coffee table or something. Sometimes it's really fascinating reading. Other times it's like, no, this doesn't apply to anybody but a bank. Well, I got a little upset because our director of communications at the NBA wrote an article all on the use of AI and what banks were going to be using it for. And I got there the day the magazine was released, and I grabbed it off of my little shelf, and I walked in, slapped it down on her desk, and went, I did not write this. And she's like, did you read it? And I was like, I'm not going to read it. I didn't write it. She's like, just read it. Well, she used an AI generator to generate the article. She just said, hey, give me 700 words on how AI is used in a banking setting. It spit it out. She took that, dumped it back in, put it into, just told it to go to a cleaner language, or as it was written by somebody else. And they published it. So I thought, well, okay, two can play at this game. Give me a reason why banks shouldn't go. A 700-word paragraph on why banks shouldn't use AI. And AI came back and said, no, banks should. And I'm going, oh, AI is self-preserving. This is scary. So yeah, for quick articles and stuff like that, works great. You mentioned before for cover letters. I was giving an AI talk at a Bankers Consortium meeting in western Minnesota, and she's like, well, give me your bio. And they kind of read my bio while I was up here, and it's just like, well, I'm going to be funny. It's like, I'm going to have AI generate a bio for me. And it was the most ludicrous, corny thing that I've ever written in my life, and she gave it. But, went on to say that, I'm especially versed in AI, and in my spare time, I like to try to beat AI code to, and it was ridiculous. But I thought, that's actually funny. AI is funnier than I am. That's not fair. So that's what we're using it for. We don't really use it for parsing any information. We're sure not going to put our member database or any information out there. But we'll use it for generating text. Okay, fine. Also keep a note, if you're using it to generate text for publication, you better have it cited on the bottom that it came from an AI generator. On that same note, since most of you aren't banks, but the banks that are here, you better have an AI statement in your policies, whether you're going to use it, not use it, how it's going to be used. Like I said before, we're so overregulated, it's not funny. But you have to have that stuff. So the other pieces to look out for, especially from a bank standpoint, you better have full logging. Everything that anybody asks an AI generator and everything that AI generator spits back better be logged someplace, because you have to have that audit trail of everything that it's done and everything it's said. Now, it does two things. A, is retaining it for our records in case anybody publishes something that we didn't know about, but it's also learning. Most of the AI generators, as you're building them, the more questions that it asks, the more things it retains, and it retains that information and spits more information back. MBA is full of lawyers. Lawyers? Good. Tess is our lead counsel at the MBA. She's been playing with AI for about a year because A, she doesn't trust it. So she keeps throwing it questions and seeing how it responds back with case log. It will start making up case log. So yeah, phantom information coming from AI is a real thing, and unless you do the back-end research of everything that it spits out, it may be not saving you any time. So it's coming. When you're thinking about deploy it, think small. And you have to think small before you can think big. Give it a specific thing. What are we going to use it for? Is it going to be statement stuffers? Banks, we're good for that. We have to mail out statements. I see a lot of banks that'll say, all right, give me a 35-word sentence just on IT security that I can put in every statement. They'll use it for that. Common threats that are out there right now. What are we seeing out there for check fraud? Big check fraud right now. So that's what they're using it for, which is fine. I don't have a big issue with that, but you better have the policies. If you're a bank, you better have your policies in place saying, hey, this is what we're going to use it for. And you're retaining anything that it's asking. So that kind of leads us to how it's really being used in banks right now. We have seen a massive uptick in fraud. Banks have been fighting fraud since the beginning of time. Somebody's been trying to defraud a bank. But we're seeing it in phishing emails more than anything else right now because they are so realistic you cannot tell. Well, I can tell. You have to really dig into them to figure out if it's an AI-generated text code or not. But the phishing emails are getting really big. We've also seen, and I didn't think this was going to be possible, I have heard of elderly getting hit with, a speech interpreter that's automatically forwarded from somebody's voice. Well, we're seeing it in other places now. So phishing emails, the Nigerian prince is fine. We don't have to worry about him anymore. Nigerian prince emails, really? Okay. So Nigerian prince is fine. You could always see that one because, it just didn't make any sense. Well, now he's running it through an AI interpreter. It'll automatically put it into the text or in the format of sentence phrasing that we would understand. On top of it, it's also deciding how many emails this is going out to, and based on the extension code on the end of it, because almost every other country has country codes on the end of their email addresses, it's automatically interpreted into their native language. So now they're not just, I'm going to create this spam email and send it out. It's like, I'm going to create one spam email, dump it into an AI generator, and send it out to 15 million email addresses. Somebody will click on it. So we're seeing those. They're getting very realistic. We talk and preach on it till we're blue in the face, but we're seeing those AI translators. Who's played with any of these AI translators, picture translators, anything online? Anybody just go down the AI rabbit hole at night? Really? It's super fun. There's a picture generator that, I don't remember the URL off the top of my head, but there's one that you can actually put in, and you just type whatever you want to put into the picture, and it'll automatically try to interpret it, put it in the picture, and then you can change it to the 1970s, or you can change it to the 1920s, and just keep adding stuff to it. It's really entertaining. I haven't found a purposeful use for it yet, but it's really cool. So that's what we're seeing on these phishing emails. They're coming in hard, and what they're actually looking for is a response. Maybe there's a payload attached to it, maybe there's not a payload attached to that one, but once they get a response, they're going to keep hitting. And we're also seeing a lot of text-to-speech. Foreign languages doesn't really matter anymore. I used to give a demo all the time where I'd take I'd do one or two things. It was either A Few Good Men, big speech at the end, or I'd do Liam Neeson's part from Taken. And you punch it in, and you could change who was saying it, how it was saying it. You could change the pitch, you could change the rhythm, you could change the language. It doesn't really matter, and it would change it on the fly. Mid-sentence, didn't really matter. So where we're seeing is they're taking that same information, because all it takes in most of these text-to-speech generators, you can take any MP3 clip. So if you have somebody talking on a podcast, you can take that podcast, strip the MP3 off of it, dump it into this thing, going mimic the speech pattern and this tone. And it will be pretty darn close to mimicking that person to the point of it being scary. So what they're doing is taking that, usually it's YouTube or TikTok clips and stuff like that from kids, putting it in, using that kid's voice to call grandma and say, hey, I'm down in Mexico, I need money sent to me so I can get out of prison. Seems pretty far-fetched. It's happened quite a bit. So where we're seeing it now, okay, who's familiar with how ACH wire transfers happen in a bank? Yeah. Whether you can initiate that wire as a customer, whether you can initiate that wire transfer, it has to come into the bank has to verify it is legit, it is going to who it's going. So what they're doing is most of the time doing a callback verification. When they do a callback verification from the Nigerian prince that took over their system, got into their IP-based phone system, now got their username and password, and has been sitting so they know when wires go out and who sends them and who has to approve them. They try to get that information from whoever they attacked, use a voice translator, intercept that phone call that is a callback verification from the bank calls the number, the fraudster picks up, uses an automatic text-to-speech routine, says, yes, I'm verifying that wire for such and such a dollar amount going to this account. Bank did everything in their power. We called back, we verified, we proved it. Wire goes out, it's fraud. Worked with 2 different banks that this has happened with now in the cities, big commercial banks. And you look back on it and you start tracing back when it happened and how it happened. And you're going, how could this happen? How dumb are you? Oh yeah, no, it's legitimate. That's how we're seeing it. So biggest impact on AI to banks right now, we're seeing in the fraud side of it. Perpetrators are using that information against us. Technically not us, it's you. They never go out personal accounts. They're always going after commercial accounts because we don't have any regs protecting your commercial accounts. Sorry, tough out of luck. It's not how it really works, but you know. So yeah, they're going after our commercial customers to commit large sums of fraud. These aren't small dollar amount items. Usually somewhere in that $250 to $5 million range. So when they hit hard and they hit fast. So with that, I don't really have anything else. Questions? Whoa, come on, really? Not one question? Okay. We don't have to have questions. Appreciate your time. Thank you.